This is a video response to conformist Dave flaws of the equal money system. Yep, that's the title. So there's a few points that I'm going to explain. The first one that you brought up was supply and demand as services. So in this point, Maddie was talking about the trade of albinos' organs because of the belief of them holding a certain magic, and a father bringing over a man, and that man chopping off his son, who is an albino's hands or fingers, and then selling him to that man. So let's look at the point of why that happened. That happened because that father needs money to survive. That father needs money to buy food, to upkeep the shelter, to provide water for the family. And obviously he did not have enough money to do that. So he understood that there is a market for the organs of albinos. And his son being an albino, he decided to compromise his son in order to get money so that he as well could survive. And in this, you brought up the point of supply and demand. It fathoms me that there's a fucking supply and demand for albino organs. Anyways, when you take into the account of an equal money system and what it will affect in this world, the organs of albinos will not be in demand anymore, because there will be... So let's take a look at this. If that father had enough money to support everything that he needed, would he then go in and decide to have a man chop off his son's fingers for money? My best guess would be no, because he wouldn't need to go into that market in order to gain funds to continue to support his life. His life would be supported. And in that, the supply and demand for albino organs would cease completely, because nobody would ever again be at that level of necessity and be that desperate to decide to sell their son's organs, and thus the supply and demand would not exist. So sure, there is supply and demand in the market today, like black market things, but none of that will continue to exist, because all of that is there because of the have and have-nots of the system. So the have-nots decide to go into black markets because they need money to support their life. I mean, people will sell a kidney, things like that, in order to gain money so that they can survive for a bit longer. So if they were provided the means to survive unconditionally, they wouldn't need to go into that black market. Thus the supply and demand does not exist. So your second point is said it's only unacceptable if you see it that way. Hundreds of thousands, if not millions, make money off of human trafficking and the selling of organs. Place yourself in the position of that albino child or son. I don't know if he was a child. Anyways, place yourself in his position and decide then whether or not it's acceptable. Sure, many people do it. Does it make it fucking acceptable? Just because many people rape does not make it acceptable. Just because the system exists the way it is does not make it acceptable for life. What is acceptable is what you would want for yourself. because that is what we, in essence, accept as ourselves. So, the third point is people in America are still psychopaths. And this comes down to the point of the belief of albino organs being magic or special. And this comes down to a lack of education. Sure, people in America will exist in that mentality of my daughter isn't going to have sex until she's some age. And then in that, they get frustrated and they pull out a shotgun and shoot the person who they slept with, things like that. Yes, there are psychopaths, but that is heavily affected by the education system. And the education system is affected by the funds that are put into it. And in the system, there's a set amount of funds that is able to be allocated to certain industries. And right now, the education system is taking a massive hit in terms of being funded, and thus taking a hit in expanding itself. Thus, that all comes down to the education of the person. And in an equal money system, all of us will not be only considering ourselves and our lives and our own finances. That point will stop so that we can take a look at this world. And if that shit still exists, we can then implement a point of re-educating them so that they do not continue the psychopathic and sociopathic attitudes that they've continued to exist within it as. And that also comes down to, and this is also your fifth point. I skipped 4, I'll come back to it. That comes down to your fifth point of the people who have money are sociopaths and they would like to see the world burn. Again, it comes down to the education, and that comes down to the fact that they only care about their own existence of and as money, meaning they only consider their own amounts of money and they don't care who they fuck over. And thus it has to come down to a re-educating of them. So your fourth point is human nature and abuse. One thing that is often missed within people who bash or debunk the equal money system is that we have to change ourselves in order to create this. Because this system and how we live is in a reflection of who we are as beings. So in order to change into an equal money system, we in essence must change ourselves. And the point of human nature being set in stone is complete shit. We have the ability to change our nature. It is all just when we accept and decide. And thus, abuse being existent because it's human nature becomes irrelevant. We have the opportunity to change that, and we just need to change ourselves. And in order to create an equal money system, we must change ourselves. And so, within that, the point of human nature and abuse becomes irrelevant because we have the ability to change ourselves as our nature. So your sixth point was competition as survival, meaning it's human nature for us to compete in order to survive, like the strongest jocks in high school get the girls, etc., things like that. That is all due because of this system of fighting for survival as well. We don't need to live in a point of fighting for our survival. Survival can be a coexistence, meaning the entirety supports the entirety to better the entirety, meaning the world will support the world to better the world, instead of us as we're existing now as we fight for our own We fight for our own lives and only consider ourselves, and within that we compete with all others to get to the top of the pyramid. And in that we only consider ourselves, which is in essence how the system is operating now, and which is in essence our nature right now, which we are able to change. And we change, and through the changing of our nature we can change the system that we live in and as. So yeah, the point of survival, it's only existent in this system, because survival is a point of fighting, meaning we can survive through living, we can survive through eating, through breathing, and we don't need to fight for that survival. So we will actually, in essence, live instead of always fighting for our survival. I mean, the entirety of our lives is fighting for survival. Well, from the time we get a job and start to live on our own, we're fighting for our survival every day because we have to go out and make money. So that's what I have defined as survival, whereas living will be doing what we need to do, meaning we breathe and we eat and we have sex and we have shelter and we have education. We live instead of fighting for our survival. So in that, the point of competition and survival becomes irrelevant in an equal money system, because we no longer have to fight for our survival. We end up living because the tool in which we can provide the necessities of life is unconditionally provided, and thus we just go out and we eat. We don't have to work to eat. We just eat because we need food. So those were the points that you brought up in your video. So thank you.